As I said in a video that came out almost a year ago, when the world was still functioning in a halfway normal way, Phineas and Ferb is a very special series, with an impressive amount of fans, so it has an even more impressive amount of creepypastas and crazy theories about everything you can think of. And yes, I did say it's a very special series. I'm aware that the series ended a few years ago, but a little over a month after this video came out, a new Phineas and Ferb movie came out on Disney Plus, known as Candace Against the Universe, so I think it's still a pretty relevant series. Leaving aside the awesome relevance that a series that came out over 12 years ago still has, today's mystery is a very interesting one because I think that, beyond being a very funny recurring joke that indulges us in the miserable youth of Heinz Doofenshmirtz, it's a mystery that has a solution, as strange as that sounds. The life of Heinz Doofenshmirtz is interesting, not to mention breathtakingly tragic. His life was so miserable that he had to throw his own birthday parties, and his parents held him in such low esteem that they disowned him, and he was raised by ocelots for a while. And when he came back, they made him replace the garden gnome. Like these, there are an inordinate number of tragic stories from Doofenshmirtz's life, but as you know, today we'll focus on just one, which we quickly see in the episode Raging Bully from the first season. The story is short and simple. On the day of Doofenshmirtz's birth, his parents were not there. That's it. And yes, I think it's clear that when describing this little story, the point was to show that the life of our favorite pharmacist is so miserable that the universe makes the impossible possible for the sole purpose that, well, he is miserable. But there have been several very interesting theories about how this could be more than just an innocent joke, especially considering new things we've discovered about Doofenshmirtz thanks to a series known as Milo Murphy's Law, where we see what happens to him after the events of Phineas and Ferb. But let's go in order. First, we need to look at the options there are for a baby to be born without the parents present. In all human births, at least one mother needs to be present, because without a mother, well, there is no baby. The first thing that came to my mind was the use of an artificial womb, but since Doofenshmirtz was born in the 1960s and that technology does not exist for the public even today, it is very unlikely that this is the case. I mean, it makes the most sense, but the timeline doesn't fit. The following theory is both creative and lazy. In researching for this video, I found a short comment from a guy who thought Doofenshmirtz was probably premature and that's it. At first glance, it doesn't make sense. Because a premature baby is one that is simply born before 9 months, but with creative logic, anything is possible. This guy said that, in reality, Doofenshmirtz was referring by his birth to the moment he was handed over to his parents when he was a baby, and that being premature, he simply wasn't considered born yet. Or something like that. To tell the truth, this theory didn't seem very firm to me. There is another, which actually makes a little more sense, which says that when babies are born, the doctors take them to be weighed and checked before they are handed over to the parents, and that Doofenshmirtz's parents hated him so much that they took advantage of that brief moment to escape. And while the latter theory makes quite a bit of sense and fits in nicely with the humor of Phineas and Ferb, there are two big theories that I want to talk about in today's video. The first, originally posted about 3 years ago by user IamEclipse on Reddit, specifically in the fan theories subreddit, is the most popular and the more tragic of the two. This one proposes that, quite simply, Doofenshmirtz's father was infertile, that is, he was unable to have children, which is something you wouldn't expect to hear in the more popular theory, because well, after Heinz Doofenshmirtz, Roger was born, which means that Mr. Doofenshmirtz was not infertile. But the theory is not so simple. IamEclipse explains that for a baby to be conceived, the father and mother must be fertile. In this theory, Mr. Doofenshmirtz has infertility problems when he is having his first child. Heinz, but then overcomes those problems by the time he is to have his second child. Roger. This can be achieved with major lifestyle changes. If in infertility it was because of a harmful lifestyle, with heavy alcohol and tobacco consumption for example. And this change can easily happen if the parent in question has to take care of a child and arrange his life around him. Thus, he would not be able to consume as much alcohol or smoke as much. And having an extra person depending on you may mean you have to look for a new job. Something that ultimately can sort out a person's life. In fact, this would also explain why Heinz had to do so many jobs in his childhood. It's because his father wasn't at home. He was busy working to provide for his family, but we are missing the most important part of the theory. If Mr. Doofenshmirtz was infertile, how come Heinz was born? Well, Eclipse proposes that Heinz was actually born to a surrogate mother, and his real parents were not at the hospital when he was born. In an exaggeratedly summarized form, a surrogate mother is a woman who becomes pregnant through artificial insemination and gives birth to and carries another couple's child. After the child is born, the baby is given to the original couple. But the theory does not end there. We all know that the relationship between Heinz and his parents was a very bad one, as they saw him as a failure for not being able to dive into the Gimmelstown pool, which represented the passage from a boy to a man. By not being able to do so, Heinz disgraced his parents, and they had to keep their distance from their son and cover their faces with paper bags. Moreover, until the arrival of only son, Mr. Doofenshmirtz's dog, the family was in constant financial trouble, so they had to sell the garden gnome and Heinz had to replace him. In fact, it was the arrival of only child that made Roger have a better childhood, because he is shown to win several prizes for his master, which would have brought the Doofenshmirtz family a lot of money. Thus, Roger came into a financially secure family, and he was also a biological son, which established a better connection with his parents, a connection that Heinz never had, being the disgrace of the family. Personally, I think this theory is pretty good, but it's not really the one I would choose to answer today's question. For two reasons. The first is that there is a bit of a problem with the timeline. Artificial insemination, which would make it possible for Heinz's birth mother to be a surrogate, was only available from the year 1978, and we know that Doofenshmirtz was born in the 1960s. In other words, at that time this theory was impossible. But this theory gives us enough context for the theory that I think explains this mystery very well, discussed by TrashJack42 in a post on Reddit. This theory, which is the second reason why I think the previous one doesn't work so well, tells us that Heinz Doofenshmirtz was never actually born, and his only real family is his daughter Vanessa. Yes, it sounds very strange, but let me explain. You see, in the series Milo Murphy's Law, which takes place in the same universe as Phineas and Ferb, it is discovered that Doofenshmirtz, in the future, will become the father of time travel, being known as Professor Time. This crazy theory says that Doofenshmirtz is the victim of a temporal accident, which sends him into the past and at the same time turns him into a baby. As a result of this freak accident, Doofenshmirtz's life would be an infinite closed cycle, which begins and ends with a newborn baby, mysteriously appearing in a hospital in Drosselstein, being adopted by the Doofenshmirtz family shortly thereafter. Doofenshmirtz would also lose his memories the moment he is reverted to a baby. A force to continue the cycle without knowing it exists, but retaining the only memory of being born without his parents present. Yes, it's a top-notch conspiracy theory, but I really loved it. And to everything TrashJack42 says, we can add a big hint that Heinz is adopted. The family dog is named Only Son, as we already know. This name is because, well, he is the son that Mr. Doofenshmirtz never had and sees him as his only son, meaning that Heinz is not truly his parents' son. Recall that only son came into the Doofenshmirtz family before Roger's birth. This theory would also make the impossible possible, that the Doofenshmirtz story is completely true, despite how ridiculous it sounds. So I hope you liked this particular video. Remember to comment any doubts or mysteries you would like to see covered in the future. Like it if you liked it and see you in the next video. Goodbye.